Hello, and welcome to Everyone Can Do PR. Today I'm going to tell you 5 things you should get right to again, talk to press better and get more headlines, and 5 things you should avoid. Before I can tell you how you should do PR, I have to tell you 2 other things. One is please tell your cell phone off, and the other thing is please don't forget to evaluate the session by the end. So I think it's safe to assume that most of the people here in the room either have launched a game already or are about to launch a game. And whenever I have launched a game, it felt a bit like that. Your game is just like one of those little stars in the big gaming cosmos, and it's just so hard to get attention from anybody. Be it press, be it streamers, be it YouTubers, be it players. And that's not only a feeling I have, that's actually the truth. If you just look at some numbers, in 2015 alone, there were over 3,000 games released on Steam. That makes 8 games a day. And if we go a bit more crazy and we look into mobile, and that doesn't even count Google Play, we're just talking iOS. Last year there were over 160,000 games submitted. That makes 450 games a day. So that is your competition if you release a game. Of course, some of those games are weird rip-offs, some of them are not a competitor of you, but the point is there's a lot of other games out there and they also want attention from people. The good thing is, that's why I think there are 2 solutions how you can still succeed, and they're both quite easy, at least technically. Number 1 is how to make it. Path number 1, you're one of those people. Easy, right? You're just so ridiculously good in what you do. You're just the Mozart of your generation. You just move people. Whatever you did is just so good that you don't really need PR. If you're that good, you cannot talk about your game at all, and somebody will discover it and it will go big, or you can talk way too much about your game, but still be successful. But the second path, and that is what 90% of people, of other developers will encounter, 99% I would say, the solution to still be successful is you make a really good game, and then you also make good PR, and then get the word out there. Because just making a good game is just not enough anymore. Those days are gone. I remember when I was little and I went into GameStop, there were every week there were 2 or 3 new games. That is the past. So today we're going to look at 5 things you should get right, 5 things you shouldn't get right, 5 things you shouldn't do, and 5 future trends. And because one part of PR is also to set expectations right, we're going to talk a lot about the 5 things you need to get right. So there will be like 80 to 90% of the presentation, and then very shortly the other 2 topics. Some words about me before we start. My name is Thomas Reisenegger. I'm from Austria. Currently I live in the UK in Brighton, and I work for ICO Partners. And we are a consulting and PR agency. I work on the PR side, and we cover a wide variety of games. That might some really big games. We worked for a long time with League of Legends and with Smite, but also a lot of smaller games like Too Dark, Amelo, Dungeon of the Endless, or Fragments of Him. Before I went into PR, I was a freelance video game journalist, so I also know the other side of the game. And my way from being press to being a PR person was actually just helping my friends out for their indie game, which turned out quite successful. So I also know how it is to work with very little knowledge in that sense, and also very little resources. What I won't cover in this talk is the basics of PR. They are also really important, but today we're going to talk about the 5 things you should focus on. There are also a lot of other basics, like how your website should look like, what is a press kit, what is a basic social media setup, how to write a press release properly, how to build a mailing list. If you're interested in those topics, you can find a presentation on that on my Twitter and also on the GDC World from last year's GDC Europe. So let's get right into it. What are the 5 things you need to get right? Number 1 is positioning. And that sounds really easy, and I bet most people think they have figured it out. But I think also most people are wrong. Positioning your game right is extremely, really hard. But if you do it, that really pays off. Because otherwise, you will have a lot of PR efforts that just go nowhere really, because you don't have a goal, you don't know what to focus on. So what you want to do is figure out 1 key message and 1 key artwork. That represents your game. That is the basic idea behind your game. Whenever you say the name of the game, the people should see in their head. So what I like to do is a test to figure out if I've got the positioning for a game right is just think about you going to a dinner with your mom or with your friends, and they're really not interested into video games. And then they're asking you, so, what game are you working on? And then you have a really short attention window of about 3 to 10 seconds to explain what that game is about. And if you say, oh, it's root-like, a random generator with cool chiptune, and mom would start playing on the phone, and that's it. You've lost their attention. But if you say Goat Simulator, you would be like, Goat Simulator? What's that? Or if you say you're making a space game with ships that are as big as the Titanic, they'll probably be like, okay, that sounds interesting. They can picture something, they can connect. And that is the basic thing. You're not selling a game, you're always selling a story, be it to players, but also mostly to press, because similar to your friends that don't like video games, they have a very short attention span, because press just gets flooded with new games. And also a bit controversial statement, but if you figure out your positioning, I think it's totally fine to go back to the drawing board. We had that happening quite sometimes, that you think you figured out what the good positioning for your game is, then you have a press release, and then actually you see what players respond to, or what fans figure out and pick out what is actually interesting about your game. You shouldn't change your positioning every 10 minutes or a week before launch, but it doesn't hurt in the beginning to go back once or twice. And now I've just 3 examples from games that are hard to position, but they did it perfectly right. One is this War of Mine, and that game is an absolute PR nightmare, because from far it looks like that. You cannot picture anything, it looks a bit boring, it doesn't have a real main character. The word war in the title already paints something like Call of Duty and a lot of ego shooting, and it's already a bit weird. And what they did to prevent all those things from happening in your head when you just read the title or see the screenshot and from you getting bored, they're always using a sub-headline. And that sub-headline is, in war, not everyone is a soldier. And as soon as you see that paints a picture in your head. You know that that game is probably not pro-war, it's probably not really patriotic, it doesn't have one strong protagonist, but a lot of people, and those people are not soldiers. So with that little line, which was probably really hard to come up with, they were doing a lot of positioning already. A similar example, or a different example, is a game called Axiom Verge. And Axiom Verge is, look at that title, like, that doesn't mean anything. Axiom Verge is a weird thing. And also the key art cannot picture a lot what the game is about. But if you know the game, you know it's quite a bit like a modern version of Super Metroid. And that's the whole thing it communicates, really. It has a really sci-fi title. The visual style is also like quite Super Metroid-y. So they knew their target audience. They wanted to have Super Metroid fans. And that's exactly what they communicate. So that's on spot. And another game that was talked here about a lot is Superhot. And Superhot technically is a bit complicated to explain, but they just summed up their whole positioning in a straightforward sentence, an FPS game where time moves only when you move, and immediately to get what the game is about. So that's very well done. The second thing you need to get right is mastering news beats. What I mean by that, every game has a certain amount of PR ammunition, and you have to really master that, how you position them, and how you sum them up or not. Just imagine, every game has certain PR beats. They're definitely going to happen. You have the game announcement, you have the first screenshots, you have the first trailer, a beta start, the release date, the release. That's the thing you can talk about with press. But depending on how important you are, or how high your profile is, or how cool your game looks, you have to use those things very differently. If you're Half-Life 3 and you're going to announce me a game, people are going to go insane, they read a load of articles, it's everywhere. First screenshots, people go crazy. First trailer, people go crazy. If you're a small indie dev making a jump and run, that looks alright-ish, but it's not the best game ever. You announce it, no one will care. First screenshots, no one will care. First trailer, probably 2 people will care. But if you sum all those the 3 things up, you have a pretty good announcement. You have a game announcement with screenshots and a trailer and quite some info. You have a much higher chance of getting covered. But that, of course, also means you've already wasted the first 3 points on that list. And that is really the art about knowing how much you have to use without wasting it to come through to press. And how you can master that is either by hiring an expert or becoming an expert. And by becoming an expert, I think the key is just you read loads of websites each day and just figure out what they write about and what is big enough for them to cover and what is not. But not also talking about which messages you give to press. It's also important in which timing that happens. And that can make quite a difference, but it's not hard to do. And at ICO, we looked at data from thousands of gaming websites around the world and when they publish articles. And as you can see, they have really high output in June because of E3. So that's probably a time you want to avoid if you're a small indie dev. Or you look at the Christmas period where there's loads of articles coming up. It would be more clever for you to go for a summer for a big announcement or your launch. The same goes for weekdays. Unsurprisingly, press is not too happy about working on weekends, which is why there are less articles on weekends. Also, Mondays start a bit slow, Fridays start a bit early because the weekend starts. So if you have the option, you want to choose a day between Tuesday and Thursday. Of course, that doesn't guarantee you get covered, but it gives you better chances. And also, on the day itself, it depends what time you want to pick. Always go for office hours. Even for bigger games, I can tell you, it makes a huge difference if you're outside of office hours. And keep the time zones in mind. What we usually do if you want to cover US and European press, we go for that timing, which is 6 PST is 2 GMT. So you get the US people in the morning and the European people early in the afternoon if you send out communications. And also keep local bank holidays in mind. May sound a bit silly, already happened quite a lot of times, that you just forget that it's a big bank holiday in the UK or in the US. And then you miss out a lot of press because you didn't wait a day and you didn't spend the time of Googling 10 seconds if there's a bank holiday going on. Those were things mostly aimed at press. Just some words about YouTubers and streamers. It would be an own talk, but we don't have time for that. So just some really important points I think are worth pointing out. YouTubers and streamers, they are not getting paid for headlines. They are not interested in having cool stories. They're interested in having games that look fun to play. So when you write to them, I would always advise you make it really short. You have in an email, you have one sentence, you have a really nice GIF where you get the gameplay, and then you have a link to the trailer. That's all they need, and that's most of the things they would care about. Many of the YouTubers and streamers that cover a lot of different games, that doesn't not so much apply for, for MOBAs, but for really classic premium games, they will only cover your game once and play it. So you should think about if you want to do that, if you want to get some hype before launch, or if you rather wait till the game is actually out so people can buy it as well when they see it. Definitely try recording your own game before if it works. If you have a mobile game, sorry to tell you that streamers and YouTubers is just not such a big deal. And definitely watch out for scam. If you get an email from PewDiePie 5000 spaceship at outlook.com, it's probably not a legit email. And an easy way to look if that email is real or not is most YouTubers, if you go at their About section, they have actually their business email address. And if that email address that sent you the request and the other one doesn't match, you can just ask them and say, hey, can you write me from your official email address to confirm you're real? The third thing you need to get right, and that's the most important thing, the most important bit is your trailer. So if I would be a small indie dev and I have a limited amount of money and I can only do one thing, I would throw all my money on the trailer. Why is that? Firstly, that is the thing, if you send an email that says reveal trailer or launch trailer, those are the emails that get the most open rates from press and streamers and so on, because everybody just wants to see what the game looks like. So you have to make that 1 minute in Spotlight count. That's the 1 minute where you definitely get some eyeballs from press. And in that 1 or 2 minute trailer you have, you want to sell credibility. That comes back to the key message. That means in a one small spotlight, what the trailer shows, you have to sell that one message you have in mind. It could be your interesting story. It could be your art style. It could be your gameplay. Don't show all of it. Focus on it and really sell that one thing that makes your game special. Small note on trailers also in terms of timing. Weird generation, YouTube and Snapchat. Make the first 15-second counts. If they are boring, you're already losing a lot of people. Especially if you make your first or second game, it doesn't make too much sense to put on your studio name. I know it's nice and you want to get it out there, but do it in the end of the trailer. Get right in the action. And also keep it short and sweet. So I would say like 1 minute to 1 minute 30 is max if you're a new studio and you make a first trailer. Two examples that I can't show you because of time reasons, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. For really good trailers is again this war of mine. Again, that game looks horrible. If you just see it, it doesn't look too interesting. But what they did in the announcement trailer was really cool. That's what it looked like. You see some soldiers running. It has really dramatic Hungarian music, so it always gets the Eastern European taste, which is the setting of the game. And by the end of it, the camera keeps zooming in that war zone and then goes straight into a house where you just see people sitting and crying, normal people, and again it says, in war, not everyone is a soldier. So that really sets the atmosphere of the game. And the point is, if people are into that atmosphere and they see that, they want to know more. And they will be okay with the gameplay not looking that great on first sight. But if they just see the gameplay, they will just click away and not even come to the point where they interact with the game. And again, super hot. Really different approach, really away from the atmosphere. What they did in their trailer, they start with super hot, which is weird by itself. So in the first 2 seconds, people are really, okay, I might as well watch that. Then they explain the gameplay mechanic really shortly. So first they got your attention with the super hot, then they get your interest because they show you the time mechanic, which is cool. And then they just bombard you with quotes that prove to you that that time mechanic does not only look cool, that it's actually cool. So they really sell it to you from A to C. That's really brilliant. Fourth point you should do, something called guerrilla marketing. And that is low-cost, unconventional marketing tactics. And that maybe sound a bit complicated. But if you just look at one example that I really like to give because it explains you perfectly what guerrilla marketing does, and it's just too good. It's too good to be true, but it actually happened. When Burnout 2 came out, Acclaim said on the launch day they're going to pay all speeding tickets on the US, which is absolutely insane. It's like mayhem. It's GTA. It's just everybody can drive how he wants, and there's a lot of accidents. A lot of people would die. And obviously, press found that's really cool and was writing about it. Gaming press, general interest press, all over the place. And obviously, the police was already reading that and were saying, hell no, that's not going to happen, and they totally forbid it. And of course, gaming press and general interest press, they picked up on that as well again and said, okay, Acclaim can't do that. No way that's going to happen with the speeding tickets. And Acclaim knew that from the beginning. So if you think about it, they were writing one press release saying we're doing that same thing, and then a second one saying we can't, without ever having to pay anything and getting loads of headlines in 2 big waves. That's just brilliant. So why would you care about things like guerrilla marketing? First of all, it is an extra PR beat. So we were talking about that PR ammunition in the beginning, and that guerrilla marketing things, those PR stunts, those are things you can just make up. They are not given, they are not set. You can just invent them. They are hard to do, they are hard to pull off, but they give you extra PR ammunition. They reach really different target groups. They often reach general interest media or different media that's not necessarily gaming. They often happen on a small budget, and they also go in a quite untapped field. Of course, there are also risks of guerrilla marketing. It often breaks taboos. It is not always 100% legal, and you have to look before if it's worth it. And it doesn't always result in good PR. And I know that saying that all PR is good PR, but that is not true. I don't think so. Because if you just want to have PR somehow, I would advise you take your phone, make a video of how you punch your co-programmer in the face. That will get you a lot of coverage. Or you just fire a pregnant coworker. That will also get you a lot of hot headlines. But that's not good PR, and that's not going to sell your game. So it also has to fit the theme of your game, whatever you do with guerrilla marketing. And what we have now, I'm going to show you 2 examples of guerrilla marketing. First of all, what they did, but then also what impact on media and on what impact on sales that whole PR stunt had. So there's a game called Crawl, which looks really cool pixel art style. And what they did, they made a boss called Gabe Newell, which looks quite familiar. It's the boss of Valve. And because the GIF looks so nice and it's a funny idea, that putting that out alone got them loads of headlines in different media. And then Gabe Newell also was writing them an email and saying, oh, I think that's funny. I'm fine with you putting me in the game. So they were lucky as well. They got 2 news beats out of that. How did it reflect the media coverage? We look at Europe, exclusively European media in that sense now. When they announced the game in August and they had the early access launch and some news and some previews, they got about 20 articles. Then Gabe Newell came along and totally crushed that and got over 100 articles. So in terms of media presence, that was crazy compared to what they did before. That really got them forward. Did it also reflect on sales? Here's the sales data from the same period. We have some small bumps and spikes with updates. And then we have that. The first line is where the Gabe Newell GIF was released, and the second one is where Gabe Newell said, okay, you can put me in the game. And as you can see, they have 2 small spikes from that, which is quite nice. They're like little updates, but they just had to make one boss. But still, it's not as impressive as the coverage numbers. So in terms of immediate sales effect, it was nice, but it wasn't the best thing ever. But then again, PR is also about repeating the message, getting the name out of you again over and over. I just know it for myself. When I saw Undertale first on a website, I was like, that looks ugly. I don't want to play that. But if you see it 20 times in a row, you're probably going to play it. So it is also an art form by itself, keeping in the headlines. And if you wonder what the sales spike is over there, that was actually a streamer. So that had direct more sales effect. And then we have another example from a game called Shooting Stars I worked on. It's an iOS premium game that was first released on iOS, and then we made an Android version. And it was obvious that the Android version is going to have a very high piracy rate, and we're not going to earn a lot of money with it. So what happened, what we did, we made two Android versions. One was the normal one, and one was the pirate version. And in the pirate version, there's a boss coming up that says to you, we know you pirated our game, so you can't beat that boss, that's it. Like, that game is over for you, you can't progress anymore. And we just released that illegal pirate version on illegal Android file sharing game platforms. So only pirates would play it. And we found that's funny. A lot of other people found that's funny. It got really good mainstream and gaming media coverage and different things like Forbes, Kotaku, Video Gaming 24/7, Touchacade, and so on. And that's like, especially for mobile games, that is media that's really hard to reach. So how did it reflect the number of articles? We've counted on the left all articles the game got before, which means the announcement trailer, launch trailer, previews, reviews, interviews. It did quite some PR. And on the right, just the pirate PR stunt. And just the pirate PR stunt alone, that one PR beat of making a little illegal second version and sending out a press release about that, got more than half of the coverage than all the other coverage combined. So really good for them. In terms of sales, we see on the left in the blue with the iOS sales. With the iOS launch going up, going down, quite normal. The Android launch boosts iOS a bit, Android starts to sell, and then we have the Android PR stunt, and then the Android PR sales really went up. And I think it's also one of the few games that had nearly the same amount of iOS and Android sales because of that PR stunt. Number 5 for things you should get right are events. And there's a lot to talk about events. They're great, absolutely fantastic for networking. They're great for recruiting. They're good for getting inspiration. They're good for feedback. Sometimes they're good for press. But if you look solely at PR, there's a very limited number of events that pay off for you. We again have a graph which events get covered by media, how many times. What we don't see on the graph is E3. Because if E3 would be on there, you would still see Gamescom, and the other thing would just shrink down and you couldn't see them anymore. But also for an indie, E3 is quite hard to reach. So we left it out for that graph. And as you can see, Gamescom gets a lot of articles. Tokyo Game Show gets a lot of articles. GDC as well. But everything after that, it really gets more quiet. So I'm not saying going to events is bad. I'm just saying, as an indie, probably don't go to every event if you don't have to show anything. I know it's quite cool at the moment because of Rami and it really works for him. I'm not sure if it works for everyone. 5 common pitfalls. What you shouldn't do in indie games PR. First of all, biggest of all, is just doing too little too late. I know it's really hard to make a game. I know it takes a lot of time and effort. But also, if you spend 1 or 2 or 3 years making a game and then don't take the extra few months to get a PR campaign off the ground, that's a shame, and it happens quite a lot. Playing the indie card doesn't work anymore. It was cool a few years back, saying, we're just one developer, we're working in a basement. That doesn't work anymore, nobody cares. If you tell that to press, it's just not impressive. There are a few examples where somebody is alone and pulls up something insane, but in general, I think that's not a good angle for press to talk to them. Number 3 is, again, I can't stress it enough, a poor technical trailer. That's the one time people are going to look at your game for sure. And if you just put it together somehow and you show how many shaders and features you have, that's not something people care about. You have to transport your one key message. I think also a lot of indies don't repackage enough. What I mean by that is, if you announce your game and it doesn't get press coverage, just announce it again. It's a bit sleazy, but it does work quite some time. And if it's not announced and if it's not out there, it just doesn't officially exist. So just don't care and try it again. Don't be too annoying, don't announce it like 50 times, but it doesn't hurt to give it a second or third try. A thing where we did that is a game called Too Dark, where we had a reveal teaser, which was nice and it worked nice. It got a few thousand views, it got media pickup, all that. But we thought from the material what we have, it could be better. So after quite some time, we went back to the drawing board, took the trailer again, recycled it, let it cut by a professional company, also added a story in the trailer that was more appealing, like a concept, and sent it out again to press. And what happened in the end was the second trailer got 40,000 extra views on top to the first one, and it got over 60 articles more. And a lot of press were thinking, we just announced the game with the second trailer. And number 5 is, I would definitely recommend you to do pull PR instead of push PR. What I mean by that, I know it's tempting. You have something, you want to share it with the world, and just go out there and rub it in all the journalists' face all the time, and you want to get covered everywhere. Which can work sometimes, but usually it doesn't. It makes much more sense to properly find out which websites usually cover that kind of games you're talking about, and also find out what which editor likes. So really going in depth, listening to the podcasts, reading the articles, getting familiar with the sites that are important for you, and then just serving them something interesting. You're already like kind of writing up the story for them. You send them a very detailed pitch of what they could write about. But that is really, even as a small game, how you can get on board with a Kotaku or a Polygon. Because you really know that that is an angle that that editor likes. And I think if I give them that assets and that story, it could work. So I think sending out a big press release campaign to a few hundred people definitely doesn't hurt and is always a good second plan. But to really get the spicy, really good coverage, it is really good to have some pull PR and have something interesting that the editor actually wants instead of forcing him to write it. And now we're going to talk quickly about 5 future trends in indie games PR. One is, I think it will be, even in the future, even more than now, it will be more focused on high compact quality info. That's just with more games coming out, but not more press coming up. You will have to use more of those news beats we talked about and bundle them up even more in the future, and waste more of your PR ammunition to even cut through to press. I think visual content will be more important, again, because of YouTube, Snapchat, all that, attention spans just go down. So I think having nice GIFs is kind of essential now. Having a really nice short trailer gets more and more and more important. PR marketing will get even closer. That has to do with a few different things. One of it is that streamers and YouTubers, they just get more commercialized and they often won't have a revenue share or some money to cover your game. And also that a lot of editorial houses and publishing houses having a tougher time now and start buying each other, and marketing deals just get more important to get also your stories off the ground. I think credibility through platform will vanish. A few years back, it was a big deal if you were on Steam. If you were on Steam, you've pretty much made it, and everybody knew you were a proper good game. That is gone. If you're on Steam, that's cool, but there's so many games on Steam that just doesn't work anymore. If you come on console now, it still gives you some credibility, but it always gets less. Also with like programs like with ID at Xbox, that just more games are coming out. So just pretending or like saying you're on a platform now doesn't give you as much boost as it did back in the day. And one last thing that I think will take off even more is clever in-game social sharing. What I mean by that, one example is again super hot. If I would share what it is, it would be a spoiler. But we have one example from a game called Alpha Bear, which is a puzzle game where you puzzle with words. And by the end of each level, they have certain templates with sentences. And depending on which words you created, different words are filled in into the template. And a lot of times, the thing that comes out in the end doesn't make any sense. Sometimes things like that come out. And people really like that, and people think that's funny, and they share it on the social media. And they don't do it because they get an in-game bonus. They don't do it because they get an extra stint. They get it because they want to. And that's just brilliant. I tell you, when Alpha Bear came out, I didn't pay attention, but my timeline was flooded for days, and it came back and again, and finally I was like, okay, I want to check out Alpha Bear, and I downloaded it and played it. So I think that's a way to go forward, and to also fight against the things like that it's getting more difficult to get streamers and press to listen to you. That's it from my side. Thanks a lot for listening. Yeah, I think we're pretty much on time or out of time, but if anyone has questions, I will be around here and also in the wrap-up room later.